Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at an album by the wonderful band XTC, their album Mama. So this is the group's 6th studio album, released on the 30th of August in 1983. This was their first album they released after the band had stopped touring. Andy Partridge, the leader of the group, suffered greatly with stage fright and anxiety. He decided that enough was enough as far as touring went, and instead decided to focus his attentions on his songwriting and the production of their albums. So this record was produced by a guy called Steve Nye, who had worked with bands such as Japan and Brian Ferry. He hadn't worked with XTC before, and was originally commissioned to produce a double A-sided single the songs Beating of Hearts and Wonderland. Those sessions eventually grew into producing a full album which became Mama here. So he gave the album a more timeless sound compared to the very distinctively 80s sound that Hugh Padgham got on English Settlement. This album doesn't sound stuck in the 80s, it has a more timeless sound to it. However, reportedly, Nye didn't get on with the band. Partridge saying that Steve Nye was one of the most grumpiest people they ever worked with. Also notably, at an early point in this album's making, the drummer Teddy Chambers decided to leave the band. He only featured on 2 of the songs Beating of Hearts and Wonderland. I think there's a few reasons why he decided to leave. I think for one, he enjoyed being going the roads and touring that. That's what his main love was. So when it became clear that XTC no longer were going to be touring, he felt maybe a little bit disillusioned with the band. It's also reported that he didn't really care for the new direction which they're going in, more pastoral acoustic nature. He was more into more traditional rock. But I think probably the main reason was personal reasons. He had a young family by this point. I believe his wife was Australian as well. So he moved to Australia. Spent time spent time with his family, and I believe just went into a normal 9-to-5 job and left the music business. Now he was never formally replaced in XTC. Instead for the rest of their career, they remained as a 3-piece band, generally just using session drummers. The session drummer on this album is a guy called Peter Phillips. So he plays some really fantastic drums, very different vibe to Teddy Chambers, but still fits XTC so well. Now Andy Partridge, I said, while they were touring, the albums are in black and white, and when they stopped touring, from Mama onwards, they became in Technicolor, which I think is a very effective way to split up the 2 distinct eras of XTC. So the album was apparently ready to be released by May of 1983. However, its release was delayed as the American label Epic thought that it was too acoustic, too pastoral for the American audiences. So it was arranged they actually changed labels again in America, Geffen Records would issue the album instead. Now they did do a little bit of promotion for this record, despite not touring. They did do a full-length hour-long TV special called XTC Play at Home, which featured interviews with the bands as well as promo films for 5 of the album's tracks. However, this really didn't make much of a difference commercially, as it was a bit of a disaster, peaking at number 51 in the UK, and 145 on the US Billboard 200. This was especially disappointing after English Settlement was seen as their big breakthrough record. It was I believe a top 5 hit in the UK. However, because they weren't touring, pretty much all the commercial success which they built up with English Settlement very much fell apart on this album. Now unfortunately I haven't got a CD copy of the album to show, but there are a couple of really good bonus tracks. There's a song called Jump, which I think was a B-side to Wonderland. That's a fantastic song, as well as a funky horn-driven song called Gold, which would have been really fun, really cool, valuable additions to the album. But I will just now show you my vinyl copy of the album here. So this is just bog standard original from 1983. So here's the sort of cover like of it, quite sort of mysterious, and there's the other side of it here, and the inner sleeve is quite interesting. The title and like sort of like this like artwork like comes from a traditional like English play like called like a mummer, and like where like people like would like sort of like dress up like in like these sort of like costumes, like sort of like newspapers, like and like rags, and like sort of like act out like a scene like sort of like in like village squares, like and like in like public and that. So sort of like very sort of traditional, like very sort of English, like sort of like old school sort of like artwork here, which is sort of like also echoed like on like the music like on the album as well. And here's the label here, just sort of custom label, XTC Mama. So that is the vinyl record looked at. So I want to now go over each of the album's 10 songs, and I will score each track out of 10, and then those scores will be used to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So it opens up with one of my favourites. It's called Beating of Hearts, which would get a 10 out of 10 from me. I think this is an amazing song. It's very dark and like sort of like atmospheric, this track, like with a lot of like Asian and like Middle Eastern like musical like influences. Very much like a big like step forward like from like English settlement, like which was a very good like sort of like very like sort of like new wave like sort of like pop rock like album. This one it just sounds like very different, like so like a big like jump up like from like English settlement. Lyrically, like it is like quite a nice song, like it's about like how like the heart like is like sort of like more important than like sort of like negative things like going on like in like in like the world, like which are like listed like in like the chorus, like louder than bombs on the highway, like louder than bombers in flight. Louder than noises of hatred, dancing us from the darkest of night is the rhythm of love powered up by the beating of hearts, like goes to chorus. I just love like the way like the chorus just flows like lyrically like so well, like it's just like a like real like masterpiece, this song. Like as I also said earlier, this is notably like one of like the only 2 songs like which like Teddy Chambers like performs on, and like he does do like quite like a like impressive like sort of like drumming like on like this track here, like so like it does like sort of blend in like to like the other songs, really doesn't sound like out of place like at all like on this album. So Beating of Hearts would get a 10 out of 10. Absolutely love that song. And the next one is quite different. It's called Wonderland, which is more like of a sort of like synth pop like sort of like style track. It really reminds me a lot like of the Style Council song like Long Hot Summer, like so like musically like kind of like just like in like sort of like the synth bass bit like on it, like the riff like on it. Like both songs like I think were like released at pretty much like the same time, so like it wasn't a case like of like one like copying like the other. Like it just so happened that like 2 very similar sounding songs like were like released like at like the same time. But yeah, Wonderland is a Colin Moulding track, which lyrically like is just about like a girl like sort of trapped in like a like fantasy world. Like I mean like it is like a really good track, like a good choice like for like a single. Unfortunately though, like I think I failed to chart pretty much like everywhere. But yeah, Wonderland though, another cracking track, will get a 9 out of 10 from me. How can we feed love on a farm, boys? Okay, and then we get possibly my favourite like on like the album, and certainly like the most popular songs like on here, it is Love on a Farm Boy's Wages, which is a really nice, very pastoral like acoustic track. Lyrically it's sort of like about dreaming like of like a future like while like you're sort of like you're currently like stuck in like a dead-end job, like in this case a labourer like on like a farm, and like just sort of like dreaming of like getting like away from that, like sort of like moving on like from that stage like of like your life. Although it does sound like a sort of fantasy like style like lyric, it could be rooted like in like reality, like as like a sort of comments like on like how XTC like were earning like very little like around this time. Like the record deal like with Virgin like wasn't like the greatest, like they were taking like quite a cut off like their profits, like so XTC like really weren't like doing like too great like financially like around this time. Now this was one of the singles from the album, and it did actually chart at number 50 like in like the UK. I mean it should have done like a lot better, but this song is very far removed like from like what was like commercially popular like in like 1983, like and like in like a good way, because like it's like so much better than like most like off like the chart drivel like off like the 80s. But yeah, Love on a Farm Boy's Wages, wonderful song, would get a 10 out of 10 from me. And the next number up is called Great Fire, which is another really quirky pop tune. It begins with this sort of like mysterious verse, like about like a sort of like a fire like burning down like a zoo. Like then like this very like melodically, like very sort of flowing like chorus comes in with like these chiming like acoustic guitars, like as well as sort of like ELO-ish like style strings on it. And lyrically, Partridge uses like the fire spreading like as like sort of like a metaphor like for like as like a metaphor like for like growing love. Like it has a great like euphoric key change out towards the end, which really keeps out the track interesting. Interestingly though, this was a last minute addition like to the album because like as I said, like it was like delayed like for like a couple of months because the record company said like there's no singles on this. So Partridge like went away, wrote this song, and like apparently like the record company thought that this was going to be like a big hit like for them. Fortunately though, it did fail to chart. Like I believe like it was played once like on like Radio 1 like or like something like, but like certainly like any like sort of like popular like radio stations like top of the pops that went like nowhere like near like this track here, just because it is so like it's uncommercial, but it is brilliant though like at like the same time. So I would give it a 9 out of 10 for Great Fire. Really good song there. And closing off side 1, we get Colin Moulding's second contribution to the album, Deliver Us From the Elements, which I think is a really underrated song. It's more sort of like experimental track, like I would say, with these sort of slightly eerie like backing vocals like going on like in like the chorus. Lyrically, it's kind of like a celebration like off the natural world and like everything that was good about nature. And like I would say though, I mean, it is a great core song, like sort of like the melody, like off like the verses, like it's like really good lyrically, like it's fantastic. Production wise though, it maybe gets a little bit like overbearing like towards the end, like with all like these sort of psychedelic like tape loop sounds, like this sort of reverb distortion sort of going on, like which sort of like completely like takes over like the song like for like the last minute. Like but though, I think the actual song itself, the main part like off like the song, like is really fantastic. So I would give it a 8 out of 10. Okay, and the next one up is possibly my least favourite like on the album. It's called Human Alchemy, which is another sort of quite similar like to like Deliver Us From the Elements, a sort of darker, like more sort of like brooding piece with very sort of like heavy tribal drums in it and like quite low mysterious backing vocals, like which sort of like provide like a drone effect like throughout like this song here. I mean, the core like off like the song like is like again really good, like very good quality songwriting here, which lyrically touches like on like themes like off like slavery. Like however, like I would say like towards the end it sort of like meanders on like a little bit, like but it is experimental, like certainly like a valuable like addition like to like the record. Like it makes this album a lot more than like simply like a collection like of like sort of like Beatlesque like pop songs. But like having like a song like this like certainly gives it like that sort of like sense like of like variety, like which most like of like XTC's best albums like really do have. Lady Bird. And then following that, we get a slightly more like lightweight song called Lady Bird, which is a more sort of like jazzier pop song, like very like as I said, sort of like Beatlesque, like this track here, like sort of like in like a similar vein to something like Honey Pie. Again, you've got really nice lyrics like on this track, like again like inspired like by sort of like gardens, like and like nature, like which like would like prominently feature. Like these themes like would like prominently feature like on like their future album Skylarkin. I really like Peter Phillips' drumming like on this song here. Like it's really very delicate, very light, and like it is like certainly like and like it's certainly one which I'm unsure like whether Terry Chambers like could like have like pulled this song off. Once again, like you've got like a very sort of Beatle-y like middle eighth, which really just like lifts like the song. Like this was kind of like the point like when like Andy Partridge like wasn't like afraid to sort of like fully like embrace like his love like of like 60s music, like whereas like kind of before like he'd always like sort of like put like a bit like off like a new wave twist on it, like whereas here like it was like him like basically like just trying like to be Paul McCartney like on like this song, and I have to say it really does work. So yeah, Lady Bird would get an 8 out of 10 from me. Another fantastic track. Okay, now the next song up is Colin Moulding's third and final contribution to the album. It's In Loving Memory of Her Name, which is possibly like my favourite song like of his like on the album. It's just got a really great sort of like upbeat, like sort of like piano driven pop sound. Like whereas lyrically like it's like a bit more darker. Like this one like about like dead like war veterans. It's got such a really sort of pleasant like catchy tune, as well as like it becomes like a very like affecting song. Like when like you sort of like listen like to like the lyrics like go on like this track here, like England could never repay you. You gave your life to be buried alongside the place you loved. Like sort of like is like sort of like what like the chorus goes like. I mean, and like also remarkably like as well like I read like an interview that Colin Moulding really doesn't think too much like of this song. Like he says that it's like one of like his like worst ones like he ever done. Personally though, I absolutely love it. Like I really can't find any faults with it, so I would give it a 10 out of 10 for In Loving Memory of Her Name.
Have I been such a fool?
And then the penultimate song is another favourite of mine called Me and the Wind, which has a really sort of like very advanced structure, this track here, like with multiple like time signature changes. The verses like are quite fast, like are like frantic, like with like the chorus like being like a more sort of like slower section. However, it doesn't really sound like sort of like forced together. Like it all sounds like very like naturally like sort of like written like this track, which I think like is like really great. Lyrically, it touches on like the feelings like at the end like of a relationship, like with like the conflict like on one hand like of like being free to sort of like do like what like you want, and like on like the other sort of like feeling like lost like with like no direction, like after like sort of like losing like the person like you've been sort of like living with, or like in like a relationship like for like a while. Now some people like have like interpreted this song to being like about like their ex-drummer like Teddy, like with references to sort of like have I been like such a fool sitting on your stool, as well as like imprisoned in your drum beat like being like one like off like the other lines like on this song. Like Partridge though like has like denied like that it is like about Teddy, like but subconsciously like he could have like sort of like weaved in like a few like sort of like references like to like their ex-drummer. But then the record closes with a rather sort of like by comparison sort of basic like rock song really, like with Fauxpas Parole, which has a kind of sort of throwback song like to like the first like couple like off like albums, like in like sort of like the style like of it, but also like just like sort of like the free like sort of like youthful like sort of spirit like off like the song. Lyrically, it's about sort of like the music industry like and like it's like greed. I just think like I mean like as a song like by itself it isn't like anything much, but as an album closer, I think it works really well. Like I mean, like they're just like having fun like on this song here. Like it's just like sort of like a much lighter side like to XTC, which I like really like. So like yeah, like this will get like an 8 out of 10, because I think it does really work very well like as the album closer. Okay, so overall this album would score 88%, so I would say this is a really underrated classic album. You've got a great mix like of like musical styles like and ideas, like from darker pieces like Human Alchemy and Deliver Us from the Elements, like to like sort of like pretty pop like off like Lady Bird like and like Wonderland, so like sort of like more like sort of like offbeat like experimental stuff like sort of Beating of Hearts and like Me and the Wind. There's just a great mixture like of like everything that what makes XTC great like on here. I like as well like I was not bogged down with like trying like to be trendy like or like a hit album. Like it's very different like from like anything else like what came out like in like 1983, but like I think like this is like what makes it one of the best albums like from that year, because like it's a sound like of like a band very much following like their own direction without necessarily striving like for success. So like in XTC's discography, like this album is often like overlooked, like with like some people regarding it like as like one of like the weakest like in like their albeit like very consistently great like discography. This is certainly one which I think like is ripe like for like a re-evaluation, because this is the point like where like we see the band so like altering like their sound like and like musical outlook like completely, while like at the same time writing some like off like their best songs. So yeah, a brilliant record here. Definitely give it a listen like if like you're not like too familiar with it. XTC's Mama. So yeah, hope you have enjoyed this review, and I will see you all next time for the next one. Goodbye.